This phone is an absolute beast. Coming up right now, let's go. So what is up, guys? Nick here, helping you to master your technology. This phone is a beast. This is the Huawei Mate 20X. So this is the bigger version of the Mate 20 Pro. However, it does make some omissions that the Mate 20 Pro has, like an under display fingerprint sensor, but it does have a smaller, better design notch. And I actually like the flat display on this one in the more teardrop like notch. Also, it has a bigger display and a bigger battery, which are important features to me. This also supports the M Pen, which is like a stylus built in design only for the Mate 20X. Now in that box came a couple of items for this device. You do get a Huawei supercharger. You can get an adapter. It actually came with the purchase. If you are in the US, you can go ahead and put this into a US outlet. Also, right here, you do have some headphones, and it came with a clear case in the box as well as a USB-C cable. So it came with this clear case, which actually looks quite nice on this phone, at least temporarily until you get yourself your own personalized case. That's basically all that came with the Mate 20X when it comes to in the box. So why do I say this phone is a beast? Well, mostly because it has a 7.2 inch display and a huge megapixel camera as well as a huge battery, making it an amazing device in terms of specification. 7.2 inch display here, 2244 by 1080p resolution, so plenty sharp. It has over 340 pixels per inch, and it does have a 40 megapixel camera. That's the standard wide camera, as well as a ultra wide lens and a telephoto lens. We'll talk more about that later. 6 gigabytes of RAM, 128 gigabytes of storage, and a 5,000 milliamp hour battery with the Kirin 987 nanometer chipset that's way ahead of the Snapdragon 845, for example. So just all around beast specifications. So this is an awesome design as well, and makes this phone even more beast because it has a display that comes almost all the way down to the edge. Very narrow bezels here for the device and a teardrop notch, which make this phone just look incredibly sleek and smooth, even though it's a 7.2 inch display device. So very beautiful design here. On the back, you have like this textured plastic kind of feeling back, but it looks like glass. That's the best way I can describe it, but it's pretty grippy. This one doesn't support wireless charging, but it definitely feels pretty nice to the touch, and it definitely feels grippy, but because it's glass, it can crack, but it still feels kind of like plastic. So that's a kind of nice feel to it with an aluminum frame on this device. It also has a nice red button there, so you can distinguish between the power button and the volume rockers. The camera bump is actually not that big, even though it has plenty of camera technology going on in there. So overall, I think it's just a beautiful design here for the Mate 20X. In addition to that, you do get a headphone jack on this device as well as an IR blaster. So this phone is packing all the beastly specs you would like. Okay, so how big is this beast? Well, take a look at it next to the Apple iPhone XS Max. You call that a Max phone? Take a look at the Huawei Mate 20X. This is way bigger than the iPhone XS Max, which is also a pretty large phone, but definitely manageable. Now, taking a look at it to its brethren, the Huawei P20 Pro from earlier this year, it also trumps over that one. Really large device here in the Mate 20X, making the P20 Pro look tiny, the first Huawei phone to introduce the triple camera by Leica. So definitely a good phone here, but just so much larger here with the Mate 20X. Now, the phone I think looks very similar to this in design is the OnePlus 6T, which has a similar teardrop notch. Let me go ahead and turn the brightness up here on this device, but you can see they actually look quite close in design here, the OnePlus 6T and the Mate 20X, but the Mate 20X way larger than that phone as well. Next up is the Galaxy Note 9, which is a very big device, but it gets towered over by the Mate 20X. So the Galaxy Note 9 by comparison feels small compared to this device. Now I do have a phone that's actually quite close in size to this device, and that is the Xiaomi Mi Max 3, which is a 7-inch display, pretty slippery too with its aluminum body. This one's actually quite close and feels maybe like it's a little bit bigger and less sleek than the Mate 20X, but the Mate 20X has a bigger screen because it stretches edge to edge, where you do get some bezel on the Mi Max 3. So this is like a budget 7-inch phone, and that's what I really found intriguing about the Mate 20X is you don't really find phones this large with these kind of flagship specifications on them, and that's what's really intriguing about this device. So reading on this phone is going to be excellent because of the size of the display. It's very wide, very tall. Feels like a little mini tablet, to be quite honest with you, and it's super smooth with that 7nm chipset. Very smooth performance here on this device. Watching video on the Mate 20X is also a very nice experience because it's a super large display to do that, and this notch is not really in the way, this teardrop notch. But one thing about this phone, has dual speakers, which are pretty loud. Actually very loud. Now, one thing about them though is that they're both on the top and bottom, so if you're holding this display like this, you could cover both of them. There's one on the top and the bottom. So I rather had one, you know, not like that, but at the same time, at least you get dual speakers here on a phone that's not the Pro model of this phone. So overall, the phone just has a beautiful beast display, and I think you're gonna be very happy with it, regardless of the fact that it's not a 1440p panel. It just looks fantastic. Color reproduction is good. It's very bright and it's sharp enough for most users. Very nice display here. I think it's sourced by Samsung. Correct me if I'm wrong. Now, one thing about this phone is that the software is not the best, I feel like, but you know, that's gonna come down to personal preference. EMUI just doesn't look quite as modern to me as some of the other more polished softwares on Android side of things. But you do get yourself high on this device right out of the box, so you don't have to wait for updates like you do on a Samsung device at this current time. But in terms of performance, because they optimize their software with their chipset, it does have really good performance, regardless of the fact that, you know, it's not running stock OS. And actually the stock OS is not as smooth this year as it's been before. So I think that Huawei's phone here has really good RAM management. I haven't had anything reload so far on this device, and overall it's a very smooth, fast, efficient phone. With 6 GB of RAM, that's plenty of enough. The Mate 20 Pro, the high-end model, does give you 8 gigs, but not really necessary, especially when you have a 7nm chipset under the hood. This phone is very fast. Okay, so the final Geekbench scores are in just about 10,000, so still not as good as even the Apple A11 CPU in terms of Geekbench synthetic benchmarks, but definitely way better than any other Android phone that's on the market. This one is a beast in performance. Overall, the Mate 20X is a beast phone. It has so many great specifications in a really large size, but can you handle the size is the question. Many people are gonna object and say, no, why would I want a phone that big? That's just ridiculous. I hear the comments already. Why didn't you get the Mate 20 Pro? Well, because this one right here offers some things that are really compelling over that, like the 5,000 milliamp hour battery. You're not going to kill this phone in a day. It's just not going to happen. It's such a large battery. And the Mate 20 Pro with a 4200, you probably wouldn't kill that one either, but my P20 Pro had a 4000 and I couldn't kill that thing in a day. So this one is probably going 2 days with its 5,000 milliamp hour cell. But this phone is not all rosy. There are some drawbacks to it. The impracticality of a phone this size does come into play when you're, you know, trying to one hand, but the home keys, just go ahead and swipe like that, and you will get a one-handed mode here. So that's definitely needed on a phone like this. Also, because it's very thin, it's actually more manageable than you think for this size. Very thin phone, grippy textured back, so this one is not going to slip out of your hands too easy, and I think it's more manageable than some other 7-inch devices I've seen. But it does weigh quite a bit at 232 grams, so you're definitely going to feel this one in your hand, in your pocket. It's a weighty phone. So talking about one of the most interesting features of this phone is its camera. It does have a 40 megapixel camera that is a f1.8 27mm wide, and it does have a 20 megapixel ultra wide at f2.2 and an 8 megapixel telephoto at 2.4. So this one, if you go into the camera, very similar to what you've seen before on other Huawei phones. You do have photo, video, pro modes, more, and in more you do have many features like slow-mo, panorama, monochrome, AR lens. You do have light painting, HDR. You do have time-lapse filter, 3D panorama, watermark. There's so much going on here. You have aperture mode, night mode, portrait mode, and photo mode. So if we go ahead and zoom outwards, you can see you get a very wide angle shot right here for this device. Very awesome with that ultra wide lens. It actually takes a photo very fast too. Has the master AR mode, which some people don't like because it over sharpens some photos, but you can go ahead and also have up to 5x optical zoom here, which is crazy considering that you only could use a main camera before if you wanted to get optical resolution on a zoom. So this can be finally the phone that replaces a DSLR for many people. And you do have 4K resolution video on this phone, but you don't get 4K 60. However, I don't think most people are shooting in 4K 60 just yet. It's not a standard, so it's not a big deal. I think you can live without having 4K 60. Unless you really want 4K 60, this one is not going to give it to you. But overall, an amazing camera. I'm going to take some more photos soon, and then I'll give you an update on how they actually perform for this phone. The front camera is a 24 megapixel camera, and it's a little bit, you know, too beautified for me. I've been testing out a little bit. It looks very similar to the one on the P20 Pro where it made your face look like over beautified. So keep that in mind if you are thinking about getting this as a selfie camera phone. But anyway, that's it. That's the Mate 20X, the bigger brother to the Mate 20 Pro. Let me know if you want to see some speed tests testing out this 7nm Kirin 980 versus the XS Max versus the Note 9, some other devices, and let me know your thoughts on this one down below. It's an amazing device. It's coming under, you know, $900 on eBay right now in the USA. In other countries, it might be a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, depending on where you're at. This one does have band support for GSM carriers here in the US. Although you're not going to find these anywhere on US carriers, you can definitely find them third party. So they're not banned from sale in the US, they're just not on US carriers because, you know, what's going on with the Huawei US thing. We don't need to talk about that. You know what we're talking about. If you guys found this video helpful, entertaining, informing, do me a favor, click that like button for me. If you're new here, consider subscribing for more. Nick here, helping you to master your technology. Be sure to be well. I will catch you all in the next episode, and peace.